So we're going to continue our discussion surrounding mental health being World Mental Health Day. And I suppose we can put it in context like this. When you cut yourself, you see a physical wound, put a plaster on it, you get a cavity in your teeth, maybe you see a dentist, they fill that hole. But when it comes to your mental health, it's very much a grey area, excuse the pun. And I think without a professional diagnosis, it's difficult to know even where to begin. So we're going to continue our discussion with Dr.Green. I missed you, man. I missed you, brother.
Good to see you.
Missed your dapperness as well. Thank you so much for weighing in. I know you prepare a huge amount for these discussions, and this is something that we've spoken a lot about. First and foremost, we always want to remove the stigma, because I think that's what's standing in the way of a lot of people actually going and asking for help, speaking to someone, which you do need to do. You can't do it on your own. But let's start at the very beginning. I'm anxious all the time. I've got a new child. I'm nervous about life. All of these things are weighing in. When does anxiety, when does sadness then move into an actual disorder? When do we diagnose that?
Powerful word, that, hey, disorder.
Disorder, I know.
Because certainly there's a lot of a loss of order, dysfunctional order that happens long before you actually diagnosed with a mood disorder or a mental disorder. And there is a lot of stigma around that. So it's all about function and functional shift. So we move in terms of traits or qualities or characteristics on features of mood disorders like depression and anxiety that take away your appetite, your sleep, change your social interaction, your behaviors. But when they affect your functioning in the workplace, typically, where you can't perform the tasks that you're meant to do, when they affect your ability to perform as a parent or in relationships as well, that's when we start looking at actually needing serious help in it being a disorder. So when it impacts your functioning of your daily activities and your commitments in your life in terms of work, family, socially, and so forth, in the community, the roles that you play, that's where we start wondering.
When that impact really does take it to that, and we're going to keep repeating this number all day, there is a 24-hour helpline. If anything that we talk about today resonates with you, please give it a call, 0800 121314. So I have to ask, I know there's kind of this debate with a lot of health issues. How much is just in our DNA, and how much is a result of our lives, of our experiences, and what we get thrust into every day, because it's a crazy world that we live in as well.
Indeed. So there are quite a few mental health issues that are rooted in genetic links. The mood disorders like depression, you do get inherited forms of depression where your body makes too little of a certain neurotransmitter in the brain, like serotonin, typically being one of them. But you also have a difference between the different diagnoses in mental health disorders, like bipolar, for example, has a very strong transmission rate, obviously, in certain families, specifically certain subtypes of bipolar. Schizophrenia, for example, as well, which typically is at onset of a young female, generally. So, you know, the different conditions have obviously different rates of genetic transmission. And that's important to know. When it comes to the environment and the impact of environment on you, sure, your ability to equip yourself with good lifestyle choices as well as stress handling mechanisms, stress coping mechanisms, and how you deal with the stresses of life. If you don't equip yourself with those tools, that's when you move into the secondary features that lead to depression. I'm
going to give you a moment to think about all the medical jargon, because I'm going to ask you about the limbic system in just a moment. Again, that number 0800 121314. If anything that we're talking about today hits home to you, please give them a call. It's a 24-hour helpline. We'll continue our discussion in a moment.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back. The 10th of October marks World Mental Health Day, and it was started by the World Health Organization to bring attention to mental illness around the world and to unite all people, all of us, in support of those who suffer. And Legantur Hospital is one of the psychiatric facilities run by the Western Cape government. I think we've spoken about some of the great work that they do. There, in fact, are unbelievable resources available, but you've got to start with a diagnosis from a professional. But I think some of this exists in the emotional space, in our environment. We're going to get on workspace in just a moment. But let's talk about, as I said, the limbic system, the physical components that are involved. What is the limbic system? How is that involved?
It's got nothing to do with the limbs. Well, actually, it does. There's structures in the limbic system that are involved in moving the limbs, like the basal ganglia, but it's generally what we refer to as the emotional system of the brain. It's combined with, structures in the deep core of the brain, like the pip of the brain. And we have the thalamus, the hypothalamus, and then on top of that, obviously, the basal ganglia, which are like the pips of a peach right in the middle of the brain. And then an important structure, which is the Greek word for almond, the amygdala, which is very involved with anxiety and emotional interpretation of the environment. So the limbic system synchronizes communication between these different structures and parts of your singular gyrus, which is more to the front of the brain, in causing an emotional response to the external environment and to the internal environment and cognitions. That's how it works.
So all of this says to me that you address it on a physical level. Yes, there are drugs and a course of treatment that you can take, but ultimately you're going to have to address the bigger picture. You're going to have to
Correct.
address, as you said, the environment. Workplace has got to be one of the most stressful kind of influences, I think, on any of our lives. How devastating can a negative workplace be?
Yes, so the issue is that involves obviously the social brain. And that asks a few questions. Asks, am I safe? Do I belong? Can I make a significant contribution in the place where I work? And do I have a sense of identity here? And that's what the amygdala essentially
These are like
asks.
deep survival instincts.
They are indeed, and that's what makes you flourish. If you answer those questions correctly, you can imagine that's where you will want to return to every day. That's where you want to make your contribution, feel welcome, feel like you belong, and so forth. But a stressed environment at work, a negative energy that's draining, negative feedback constantly, no one that's looking at building you up and just constantly breaking you down, that leads to then obviously a negative cycle, which obviously can affect your mood quite adversely.
I think someone very close to me, someone within my family, has taught me this lesson, that your job isn't your life. It doesn't define you, and you can make radical changes.
Correct.
This is something that we all need to consider, whether we have been diagnosed with a mental disorder or not.
Some people are just so good at what they do that they get their greatest sense of identity from that skill set. What they need to realize is there are many other attributes that don't involve your job in terms of value systems and your belief system. The fact that you're a loyal friend, the fact that you're an honest person, the fact that you have integrity. Those are values that deserve to be honored, and you need that feedback as well for you to realize that there are different things in your character besides your academic qualification.
So what would your first step be to someone who has had a light bulb moment listening to us, and I hope many of you are taking cognizance of that? What would your first piece of advice be? When people come to you with these sorts of issues, what do you tell them to do first?
Well, the first thing you look at is the emotional response and the energy levels and where they are, is it appropriate for what they're going through? If you've gone through a whole lot of shifts, if you've gone through a divorce, if you've lost someone really close to you, and your child's been sick, or you've been really ill, and you're going through a lot of negative thoughts, and you've gone through hit after hit after hit, it's appropriate to feel a sense of sadness and so forth. What isn't appropriate is to not gain perspective that it's temporary and it's just a season and that you're going to get through it and move on. What is appropriate there is that you equip yourself with skills to help get yourself out of that pit, but go through the emotions, obviously. Don't numb them completely. And then when you come out of that, obviously venting and speaking to someone about your cognitions around that so you don't get stuck there, to help you obviously focus on the positive attributes as well. Because they often refer to depression as a disease where you wear dark sunglasses all the time. So everything you look at, you see through the lens of these dark, heavy sunglasses.
Oh, I absolutely love that. Well, if you would like to speak to someone, there is a 24-hour helpline, 0800 12131, for courtesy of the South African Depression and Anxiety Group. They've got fantastic people waiting to talk to you right now.